This is an Alexander Ovechkin shirt. He is the captain of the Washington Capitals. And for those of you guys who don't know him or don't care about him, I get that, but give me just a minute. This will all make sense in a minute here. Excuse me. Alexander Ovechkin is one of the most talented players in hockey. He is clearly going into the Hall of Fame. He scored more goals and more points than most people in the game. He's among the game's top leaders there. He's always been known for having incredible skills, who has been able to take the Capitals to the playoffs pretty much just on his strength of will and his skill alone. And as I've mentioned to you before, that was never enough to get them over the hump into the Stanley Cup Finals. The point here being that Alexander Ovechkin had more than enough talent to be successful. That was never in doubt. As his career began to peak, he's about 31 or 32 years old, people began to wonder, well, what does he have to do to win the Stanley Cup? And it was clear that what he needed to do was to become more of a leader. He needed to take more of a leadership role. And that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about today. In the Capitals' playoff run that they won the Stanley Cup this year, you could see a clearly different Alexander Ovechkin. He did all the things that leaders did. So what did he do that was different? The main thing he did was he started putting his teammates first and really encouraging and supporting his team. He's always been a great player. You know, he went out and did the things that a leader was supposed to do. He set the tone. He had more goals than anybody else in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It was very common for him as the series first got started. He'd go right out and blast the other players. He'd go hit some guy and deck him and try and set the tone. But what was more important than that is how he was so supportive of his teammates, that when the media would come to him as the leader, he did what good leaders do. He took responsibility for all the failures and all the doubts, and he gave all the joy and all the love and all the credit to his teammates. So in their first series, when the Capitals lost their first two games at home against the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the media began to talk, they would immediately go to Alex Ovechkin, given that he's the captain, and he would immediately say, listen, I guarantee we're going to go to Columbus, we're going to win the next two games, and when we come back here in Washington, the series is going to be tied 2-2. He didn't allow his teammates to get caught up in that. He took responsibility. He took ownership. Nobody wanted to talk to the press about why the Capitals were getting blown out at home and getting beat and, looked like they were going to have another early exit from the playoffs. Ovechkin stepped up. He took responsibility and he took ownership of that. And you can bet that the players noticed. When the Capitals won a series afterwards and people were celebrating, the media would always say, Alex, what does this mean to you? How important is this? And he would deflect it and say, I'm just happy for my guys. I'm just happy for my team. Of course, like I said, he scored goals. He was an excellent player on the ice, but he had even bigger victory celebrations when his teammates would score a goal. If you watch some of the highlights of him in the locker room, he's pumping up his teammates. He's being a vocal leader. When they go out and score and make a big play, he's screaming and yelling at the top of his lungs and pounding guys on the chest and giving them a hug. He was more happy that his teammates were playing well than everything else. That kind of elevated, that the team gelled around him. That's the difference, guys, between a captain or a boss and a leader. There's a lot of things that's popular now. You hear the little hashtag boss lady or boss this and boss that. Don't be a boss. No disrespect. It's a great tag. It's a great idea. You know what? People don't follow a boss. People may listen to the boss. They may do what the boss tells them. They may obey the boss. They don't love the boss. They don't like the boss. They do what the boss says. Instead, guys, get out there, be a leader. When you go out and you take responsibility for when things go wrong, and then you happily give the accolades and give the praise to your coworkers, when you make it about the guys on your team, when you make it about your customers or your clients or the fans in Alexander Ovechkin's case, people will love you for it. And when you go out and do what you do with passion and joy, and you're good at it, and you produce, and you don't take any of the joy for that, if you give the credit to others and take all the responsibility for that, people will follow you through a brick wall. They'll love you. That's what the rest of the Capitals did. They rallied around Alexander Ovechkin. He wasn't just the captain, right? He wasn't the boss. He was the leader, and they loved him for what he did. So that's kind of our leadership lesson today. You can learn things from sports. There's a lot of good life lessons in it. That's what I'd say today. Don't be a boss, be a leader. Take full responsibility on your shoulders and your shoulders alone, and then give all the love, all the joy to everybody else, your teammates, your customers. Give more than you take, and watch the results of your organization just explode upward. It's the only way to win. The Washington Capitals would not be Stanley Cup champions if Alexander Ovechkin was still making it about himself. If he was just the super talented guy who wouldn't really lead, who was the captain, but who was not necessarily a leader. He's a Stanley Cup champion today because he transitioned. He's always been a great player. He's always been a super performer. He's transitioned and become a new person. He's developed into a leader. He's become a brand new human being. He's now a leader. That's what you want to do in your business, guys. So another life lesson learned from the Washington Capitals Stanley Cup playoff run. Guys, as usual, it's been a pleasure. Love you guys. Take care. Be well. Peace.